Hey, 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 what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. And this is Thursday. That means today is the day I dive deep into history and try to figure out where the fuck all the women went. And I shine a light on one particular woman every week, just so that we can know her story and give her time in the spotlight, because there are some women out there that deserve it. You know, only a handful of us made it into the history books, and that doesn't seem right. There seems like there should be more people out there that have done cool things that have female stuff. You know, I don't know if that's appropriate to say. Anyway, once again, I've been saying it on all my podcasts. I'm not editing this, so whatever funky, crazy shit comes out of my mouth, that's what's coming out of my mouth. I'm trying to be authentic here, guys. Like, I don't feel like editing too much. I mean, I might remove some like dead airspace, but honestly, I probably won't even do that. I just want to sit here and have a conversation with you guys about these wonderful women. And if that means I curse, and if that means I get on a soapbox, and if that means I maybe say some controversial things, well, that's me. And if that sounds cool to you, then you should stick around, because today's lady is pretty badass, as is the rest of them. So if you haven't checked out my past podcasts, make sure you go back. There's only a few video podcasts, but you can always go head over to Spotify and listen to my audio podcasts, and there's quite a few there. So hopefully I'll see you in both places. Yeah, check it out. Let's do some shameless plugging and house cleaning. Basically, guys, if you want to reach out to me, there's ways to do that in the description box. There's also ways to support the podcast. At the very least, I would appreciate it if you would like, comment, review, share, and follow. Please and thank you. And so there's that. If you want more information on the women that I talk about, or a whole bunch of other stuff, you can check out the Medium publication. There's a link there. There's also a link to my other podcast, which is two podcasts. Bam. And maybe a third. We'll see how it goes. I'm feeling crazy this year. And to find out why, head over to my other podcast, Our Mystic Road Trip, where I cover astrology, tarot, crystals, herbs, ley lines, ghosts, mediums, everything you can think of that's basically spiritual, magical, mystical, or as some people like to say, woo-woo. And because I'm a woo-wooer, I like to woo-woo. And if you like to woo-woo, you could check that out too. All right. I think that's it for the shameless plugging and the house cleaning. So let's just jump right in. Last podcast, we were in Russia. We are staying in Russia this time, but this time we're going to talk about not a poet, but a warrior, and a badass warrior at that. Let me just tell you, warning, beep, 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 warning, I may pronounce these names wrong. And it doesn't matter how many times all my Russian friends tell me how to pronounce these names. My American mouth sometimes just doesn't want to say them. So I try really hard, and I hope I don't offend anybody. And hey, if you want to help me with pronunciation, that's cool. Just be chill about it, man. Don't come at me. Just be chill. Okay? We can all be chill. All right, guys. So, as I said, we are in Russia, which means we are going to cover a couple of things we probably talked about last time, but I think it's important to really cover them again because they're very significant to this woman. So we're going to go back in time to the early 1900s again, and we are going to be heading to Russia, like I said. And at this time, as I said in the last podcast, it was a giant mess, right? In the early 1900s, Russia was a giant mess, right? Everybody's fighting for the spotlight, but nobody is really winning at this time, okay? The Russian Empire is under the rule of Tsar Nicholas II. In fairness to Nicholas, I think he kind of inherited a mess. And didn't know how to clean it up, and he didn't know. He was going off of what he was taught. The Tsar is busy in his golden palace. The people of Russia are starving. They're protesting, and most importantly, they're trying to figure out who at this point who Russians should really be. Some are leaning towards socialism. Others are thinking capitalism. And some people are just kind of hoping to eat. In the end, that's really, really what it was, And then here it comes. World War I, right? The Great War until the next one, right? And Russia kind of gets sucked in. They're sending soldiers to the front. These soldiers don't have any training or equipment. It's chaotic. It's a mess. And soldiers are like dying left and right. The morale of the soldiers are low. And on top of that, their country back home is falling apart. And so it's all craziness. And this is where our person comes in, and her name is Maria Bochkareva. I think I'm saying that right. And so that's where her story starts, is in World War One. So before we jump into that, though, as always, let's talk about what it was like for women. Okay, so we kind of went over this in the last one, but like I said, it's a little different, right? Women didn't have a ton of options. You can marry some guy who treated you like you were his servant, or you could work yourself to death. Basically, those were your options, and not great options. But if you were feeling really adventurous, you could, become a nurse during wartime. That's a hectic job. Being a nurse in war is. Those are some of the biggest heroes, I think. Sorry, my cat just meowed. Pet my kitty. I think nurses are some of the biggest heroes. And this is where Maria Bochkareva had to try to figure out, but she didn't want to sit on the sidelines. She didn't want to be a damsel in distress. She wasn't waiting for some man to come sweep her off her feet, And this wasn't the time, though, for women to stand in front of a mirror, right, and practice. Oh, how are you doing? I love you. No. Women in Russia were supposed to have ideas. They weren't supposed to have ideas, but they had them. And they also weren't allowed to have weapons. But you know what? They were just basically keep the house, raise the kids, stay out of it, stay silent. But Maria, she said, forget that. I don't want that. And so then she stepped out into the world. So let's talk about Maria Bochkareva. All right, so Maria had always kind of been like this. She didn't want to sit around and feel sorry for herself. She wasn't waiting for her man to rescue her. She didn't need rescuing. Really, truly. She was out there doing her own thing even before. But when World War I came about, she really had this draw, this feeling, this sense of duty come over her. The war was really a turning point for Russia and for her. Thousands of men were being sent to the front lines, but women, they weren't even considered. And then let me move my notes. So when Maria heard that there was a need for soldiers and volunteers, she jumped at the chance. She saw an opportunity to prove that women were just as capable as men. And so what did she do? She joined the army. Now, this wasn't the kind of army where women just served as nurses or could. No, Maria was signing up for the front lines. She wanted to be in it, and no one was expecting a woman to march into the battlefield. But Maria was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. But she didn't just join the army, man. Oh my God. She didn't just walk in with a rifle and say, I'm ready. That's just not how it was for her. She actually started a whole unit. A whole unit. It was called the Women's Battalion of Death. That's right. Oh shit, Death. What a title. That's some feminism right there. She said, we're going to go head to head with death, and we're going to come out victorious. And she wanted to show the world that women weren't, just sitting on the sidelines. They were ready to fight. They were ready to bleed, and they were ready to win. So She didn't just show up, though, with a group of women and be like, hey, we're here, let's have a battalion. No. She trained them. She led them. And she, Maria wasn't the leader that was like, okay, you guys just go out there, do this, I'm going to sit here. No. She was right there in the trenches with them. Like right in the trenches with their soldiers, fighting alongside them every step of the way. And while she was a woman in a man's world, that didn't stop her. She didn't just prove the women could fight. She proved that they could lead. She ran her battalion with grit and grace. She had the kind of leadership that made men want to follow her. And the soldiers who marched under her banner knew they had a fearless leader. And despite all the setbacks, despite the fact that she was a woman in a time when women didn't belong on the battlefield, Maria's battalion had a huge impact, right? They didn't just serve as novelty. They fought hard. They didn't back down. She made an impact on the battlefield, and she made a statement. Women were capable. And the men that fought alongside her, they didn't know what hit them. The woman was just defiant. She was just absolutely defiant. And she was living, breathing, right. The world says, if you can't, you can, right? Afterward, unfortunately, after the Russian Revolution, Maria's battalion didn't quite get the credit it deserved, Needless to say, the Bolsheviks weren't thrilled about the idea of a bunch of women soldiers. But they didn't know what to do with her. She was captured, she was imprisoned, and eventually she was executed. But, the legacy still remained. The books didn't quite give her the credit she deserved, but, stories still stuck around. So she was another victim of the revolution, I guess. The revolution had a lot of great... Once again, this is a very hard subject to talk about, and it's very extensive, and you have to have all the players in play to understand it. So I don't want to go too into it, but she was definitely another victim. She wasn't just a soldier; she was a trailblazer, and that is amazing. And that is it was a short one, but that's Maria. There's tons more we could go into about her and talk about more, but I think I'll leave that for the Medium publication. I just really felt like her story, that she created this battalion of women that went out and kicked ass. Like, come on, right? And then she got arrested and imprisoned and killed because they didn't know how to handle her, because she didn't fall in line with the Bolsheviks' ideas. I don't know what to say to that. I think it's a bunch of BS, and I think it's sad that such an amazing war hero, was treated like that. And I know she's not the only one that's ever been treated like that, but in this situation, it's just doesn't sit well with me, That's it for Maria Bochkareva. She went out, she didn't ask permission, she did what she wanted to do, and she came out a hero and a legend. And so I hope this little taste of me talking about her has enticed you into checking her out, and seeing what else is up with her. And that's it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to reach out to me, have some suggestions on people I should cover, or want to just chit-chat, you can do that through the links in the description box to my social media. There's also an email there for those of you that like to rock it old school. There is also links to my to support the podcast. You can do that just by liking, sharing, commenting, following, reviewing, whatever you want to do. But you can also, if you'd like to kick a little cash my way and my cat's way, you can do that as well through my Buy Me Coffee and Patreon. There will be tons of stuff coming up in February that will make it worth your while. A newsletter, maybe some ebooks, all that kind of stuff. Also like some polls and things like that. So there's that. If you want more in-depth coverage of this and so much more, like I said, check out the Medium publication. There's a link to that as well. There's also a link to my other podcast, so check it out if you like crystals, tarot, all that kind of stuff. Spiritual, magical, mystical, holistic, herbal, maybe Sasquatch, maybe some some of that kind of stuff in the future. I find it interesting. I don't necessarily know if it calls with spiritual, magical, mystical stuff, but I'm interested in it, and so maybe, who knows. Yeah, that's it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hope you don't mind staring at my mug if you're watching me on YouTube. And as always, guys, stay curious, and I'll see you next week.